Hello everyone and welcome to another conversation with Coliving founders. This is Guy and this time we're talking to Atticus LeBlanc, who is the founder of Padsplit. And Padsplit is really a platform that allows renters and co-living owners to get in touch. And they have been in the news recently because they are offering co-living, especially at affordable prices. At Padsplit, the median income for renters is $30,000 a year. And so to me personally, who have been in the scene for years, it's the first time that we're seeing co-living really pushing to offer solutions to people that need affordable and accessible housing. So we're gonna dig into a lot of different topics in this conversation, including how they build out the platform, how they deal with evictions, how they became profitable this year, and we're gonna hear a lot of inspiring stories. So enjoy this episode. Unfortunately, the video quality isn't that great. That was on our side, but the content still is. Enjoy it, and we'll have a little debrief afterwards, as always. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Guy. Happy to be here.
So, look, personally, I heard about Padsplit around a year and a half, 2 years ago. Especially here in Europe, we've been hearing about Padsplit more and more, especially also through the press, how you guys reached like 10,000 units. And I mean, 2 weeks ago, we interviewed Brad from Common, because like Common went bankrupt, etc.
Sure.
But one thing that people also need to understand is that we have completely different co-living models, right? From ground up developments to taking on master leases on big buildings. And what I find interesting with your concept is that first, you're tackling affordability, which very few are.
Yep.
And second, you have a very unique typology, which is houses. So yeah, it'd be really cool. Maybe we can start with, if you want to explain what's your model, like what does Padsplit do, big picture speaking, and then we can dig into a few.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of key differentiators. The first thing is maybe even just the problem. Housing, as I think of it, is generally facing two major problems. Certainly here in the U.S., I would imagine it's similar in Europe, although I'm not as confident there. And it's supply, right? Everybody talks about housing supply and supply shortage per se. And then the second problem, which almost nobody talks about, is access. And that was a problem I was really passionate about solving. And so it's not just affordability, but do people who are earning full-time income actually have the ability to qualify for an apartment? And so in the US, you've got 45% of renter households who earn less than $35,000 a year, which means that for most property managers in America, that means the underwriting requirement is going to be for $1,000 a month. Like, those people are not going to qualify. So 45% of rental households are not going to qualify for a $1,000 a month apartment max. And those just don't really exist in the overwhelming majority of large US metros. And so that's what we were built to solve. And then how we solve it, we're a marketplace. So comparable to an Airbnb, we sit in between these renters who generally need access to better, more affordable housing options, and then hosts, real estate investors. And it's true for any typology, although the majority of the inventory on the platform is single family homes. And the value proposition for those folks is, do you want to make more money, right? Do you want to increase your net operating income? If you're an investor, the answer is almost unequivocally yes. And then for renter, if you cannot have access to any other traditional housing option, and I can give you access to a fully furnished room, all utilities included, in an individual space that's in a quiet neighborhood, that's probably better than anything else that would be on the market for you, that's closer to your place of employment, then that's a pretty compelling value proposition. And so we sit in between those two groups. And effectively what we do is offer three core services. One is the consolidated demand generation, providing access for those folks and getting them through a workflow into those rooms very, very quickly, collecting all of the payments from all of those individuals and distributing them to the owner, and then handling the things that I think are part and parcel of co-living. So how do you work through roommate issues? Because most hosts are not at all equipped to do that. And so we focused exclusively on those things that most housing providers either cannot do on their own or don't want to do on their own. And that's where we really drilled down our focus and what we're still focused on today.
Mm. So that's really interesting because the first thought I had when looking at your model was how do you make sure that everybody is having more or less the same experience in the places? For example, I've seen it as now there's more and more like co-living courses also online. And this one American guy, I forgot his name, but then he was preaching like, here's my model, and his model was like, in every house you need to have like a locker for each
Mhm.
room. There needs to be a headphone policies in the living room. Not so much a big fan of that, but like whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if I'm a host, I have a house in the suburbs of Phoenix, and I'm going to Padsplit because I'm not living there maybe, and I want to maximize revenues because I have like 4 or 5 or 6 rooms available. What what will you help me with, and what are kind of some of like the non-negotiables that you're going to impose to the hosts?
Yeah. So it is like a very just baseline level of non-negotiables. So we need 2 points of fire egress. So it's like fire safety, health safety, and just what we know are best practices. So 2 points of egress from the home, from each room, smoke detectors in each bedroom, because we know a lot of times that the doors stay closed. So it's not just as fire code dictates outside of bedrooms and sleeping areas, but inside as well. Um, you need to have a certain level of furnishings. So you need to have a bed, you need to have a dresser or a place to store clothes, you need to have a lamp, you need to have a certain number of outlets, but just very baseline type of requirements that meet HUD standards. And that's really it from us.
You need to have a desk, for example?
No, you don't need to have a desk.
Have a
Uh,
desk.
but my philosophy really born from, I started investing in 2008, early 2008, and owned and managed a number of properties. And what I saw, both through my own work and the work of others here in the Atlanta metro area, was that like I felt like I was an expert in this market, and specifically a very limited subsegment of this market. And nobody could touch me in that specific subset of this market. But I didn't know anything about suburban Phoenix. But I was reasonably confident that there was someone who was in suburban Phoenix who knew that market as well as I did. And so our entire management strategy was not, I have the right solution, listen to me, and I can tell you how to do this. Instead, it was, how do I empower the people who are closest to the problems, who understand those markets better than anyone, with a set of tools, information, and services that they can use to deploy this model in their local communities that they know like the backs of their hand. Uh, and that's really our management strategy. And so you will see, okay, well, some people want to have lockers all the time. Some people want to have flat screen TVs in every bedroom. Some people want to make sure that every bedroom has a private bathroom, or that there are common areas with ping pong tables or what have you. And other houses have no common areas at all. So like it really just flexes the ability to choose your own specific strategy. And some of those depend on the geography. Some of those depend on which type of customer you're going after, whether it's a young professional or senior citizens in some cases. And like those are very different. And from our perspective, we just want to make sure that for the renter side of the marketplace, that they have lots and lots of choices, and the market will ultimately decide who the winners are, and what the best practices are, and whether something like lockers is a must have. But far be it from us to make that determination. Our role is to expose the data to those investors to say, hey, lockers are amazing, everybody loves lockers. But it's not just based on my opinion or my limited experience of managing 650 properties.
Okay. So, like, how long has it been that you've been running Padsplit? When was Padsplit founded?
So I wrote a white paper that became Padsplit in late 2016. This house actually was the first
Okay.
Padsplit prototype, which was one that I had owned for a couple of years at that point. In 2017, we brought on our first third-party host in 2018, and so for all intents and purposes, like really 2018, even though we were officially founded in 2017.
Okay. And so like from then, like I heard like January of this year, you had 10,000 units. Okay, two questions. First of all, is like, where did you spend the majority of your time and energy in the last like 7 years? For example, what I'm wondering is, I saw that, you do have, it seems like you developed your own like technology
Yes.
behind it. It's also like enabling hosts. So I can imagine that like a big component for you is like tech. And I guess another big component is attracting landlords. And for this, by the way, you're doing an amazing job. Like when you go on your website, you can compare like this is how you're gonna make money before Padsplit and afterwards. Also, your Instagram is like you're actually one of the only operators that really focuses really hard on attracting hosts. Because most operators just focus on attracting tenants, um, or at least on social media, right? Because
Interesting. Okay.
they're looking for like bigger properties that you can attract with social media. So I found that interesting.
Yeah. So for us, like, gosh, what have I spent my time doing other than pulling my hair out, Guy? All sorts of things, and I think it probably boils down to the management strategy that I outlined. Is just how do we what are the things that we are really good at and that hosts need us for, and what are the things that ultimately we think they are better at, and how do you provide technology to the people who are closest to those problems so that they can go solve them. And in some cases that's a member, right, or a resident renter. um, but I think the biggest thing is like if you look at co-living models generally, where we are clearly a marketplace, a lot of others have been proprietary operators, where again, like the person with the lockers example, and they're doing everything in-house. Well, it's in some ways easier to run that type of business because you control everything that you do. But it's also limiting in the number of other stakeholders that you can bring in under that umbrella, because everybody has different opinions about everything. And so if I could summarize what I think we've done in the last 7 years, is really just how do we accommodate as many use cases as possible, so that whether you are focused on frontline workers like I am personally, or you are focused on uh, millennial young professionals who are nomadic, or traveling nurses or senior citizens, that you can find the set of tools and services that you need on Padsplit to be able to meet those needs that are specific to your geography or to the demographic that you're targeting. That's absolutely meant a lot of technology, but it's also been a lot of process. And I mean, we've had actually just today, this is hot off the presses, Guy. So we're at 13,300 units right now across the country, but we just crossed 30,000 stays. So we've had 30,000 people since we started that have stayed with us. Well, you can imagine in 30,000 stays, we've seen just about, God help me, like every possible thing that you could see in a co-living type of environment. And distinct from technology, we've had to build separate processes around each one of those. What do you do in a situation where Johnny steals my peanut butter, where Susie's playing her music too loud, where, oh my gosh, I'm afraid my roommate is out to get me? And how do you build interventions and early warning signals or processes around resolving any of those things that ultimately dramatically impact not just the viability of the platform or co-living environment, but can be real issues, like human issues. And we're in lives 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So there's a lot of non-tech human interventions that happen behind the scenes that ultimately I think are just really, really complex and difficult, and maybe understated or underestimated for why this business is as difficult as it is.
Yes, because at the end you are I mean, the thing of co-living is that since you have more density, you have more interaction points between people.
Yes.
And the more interaction points you have, the more things can go right, but also the more things can go wrong. And the more you're going to have residents, the more you're going to have a pretty much representation of what society is. And so there's
Yep.
going to be people who steal, there's going to be people who commit sexual assault, there's going to be. So how are you solving this? Like you said, like, if like these use cases of like somebody, like a tenant, for example, feels a threat, or
Yeah.
if Jack stole my peanut butter.
Yeah.
What did you implement to solve this?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is recognizing our limitations. And that might be easier as a marketplace than it is as an operator, because we're fully remote. We're not on site. We're not the ones who are cutting the grass or fixing the leaky pipe, or certainly we're not in any position to arbitrate a dispute of who's telling the truth. Was your peanut butter stolen, or did you just want a free peanut butter? Like, I don't know, and it's almost impossible for me to be the law to figure that out. Even what I can do is understand, how do people react to those situations? How do you ultimately de-escalate any potential conflict? And how do you allow people to vote with their feet? So the most powerful tool in our arsenal is giving a resident the power of agency and making a choice of, okay, so you're telling me that let's run with the stolen peanut butter example, that someone's stolen your peanut butter. Well, you have the ability as a resident on our platform to write a review or give a score or rating for that resident, which of course we keep internal as data. You can contact your host to let them know that this is a problem, and that you think this person needs to leave. And depending on if their score gets low enough, their membership can be terminated by Padsplit, or a host can investigate the situation, property manager, et cetera, and say, yeah, this guy's definitely a peanut butter thief. Here's your notice to vacate. You need to go. And if you don't leave, either result of the termination or the notice to vacate, there is a legal process for eviction where that person can be physically removed from the property. The other alternative is for the person who's worried about peanut butter thieves, they have the ability through Padsplit to transfer to any other unit at any time. So if I'm really concerned, the way that I will demonstrate my concern is, yes, I'm going to rate that person, and yes, I'm going to leave. And because the units are fully furnished, all utilities included, and I have the capacity to effectively live out of a backpack or a suitcase, I can move across town or across the country, no questions asked, very, very easily. And so that the ability for those residents to transfer is far and away the most powerful tool that we have. And if it's a really serious situation, you need to call the police, right? Like I am not 911 as your Padsplit customer support agent. You need to call the police and get authorities involved. And I think what I've noticed, particularly compared with my experience in managing and owning multifamily and single family rentals, is our capacity as co-living providers to intervene early in those situations is a tremendous factor in just improving outcomes overall, where you can de-escalate a potential conflict much more quickly and much more readily than you would or would see in a traditional multifamily environment, where the visibility of any third-party observer ends at the front door of the house. And it's not that people aren't sharing. Again, you think about 45% of the population that can't afford or can't even qualify for a $1,000 a month apartment. People are obviously sharing in lots of different circumstances. But when the third-party visibility ends at the front door, anything could be happening inside and no one knows about it. The difference is now we know about it. And so we can provide interventions. And again, the most powerful is get the person out of that environment as quickly as possible. And if you see that happen enough times where the peanut butter thief is the only one remaining, then your data is pretty clear that guy's the problem. And there's other interventions that you can provide.
You talked about eviction, because I feel like that's a big topic, right? Like also from a legal perspective. Can you evict somebody just for stealing peanut butters?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You can absolutely evict for those types of rule violations or any sort of behavioral issues. I mean, any point at which they're infringing on someone else's quiet enjoyment of the property, you can absolutely do that. And I think common misconception is, well, how do you run an eviction in a house that's shared among multiple people? And it works more or less the same way, but you can absolutely evict one person in one room and preserve the others. That has not been an issue at all. But I will say, like, overall for Padsplit, our eviction rate right now is 1.6, 1.7%. So it's really very low. And that's not even of actual filed evictions. That's just people who we have put in, quote, eviction status, meaning we haven't been able to contact them. They could have already moved out, but this room, as far as we're aware, needs to go into eviction status. But it doesn't necessarily mean that an eviction has actually been filed. The other thing for us is, because we're a membership-driven organization, we have this intermediary step of that membership can be terminated. And so there's an incentive on behalf of the general population of renters to try to retain their ability to be Padsplit members, because in most cases we have a lot of benefits for those residents, and we're often the most affordable option, certainly most flexible in town. And so in a lot of cases, just the potential loss of any membership or being banned from the platform is a motivator that happens well ahead of any potential eviction.
Yeah, because you just mentioned a lot of like benefits for residents, and one of the things that you do is the credit score, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being in Europe, we don't have this whole notion of credit and credit scores, but I think in America it's pretty important, especially if you're more in the low/medium income bracket. And so can you explain just how that works and what you think, how's it impacting people's lives?
Yeah, what goes back to the first thing I said about just creating access generally. So most property managers in the United States require an upfront deposit. They require 3 times the monthly rent as an income requirement, and they often require a minimum credit score.
Yeah.
And sometimes they require other things, but those are like the 3 meatiest buckets. Well, for us, I was convinced pretty early on, and have been running co-living projects independently since 2009. So I had a decent amount of experience with this. I was convinced that the upfront deposit and the credit scores didn't really matter in terms of being able to successfully underwrite a customer and collect over time. And so Padsplit does not look at either credit scores on the front end or require upfront deposits. So there's dramatically larger volume of customers that can qualify to rent through Padsplit than otherwise. But then on top of that, we report all on-time payments to those credit bureaus, so that when they move on to an apartment or to buy a home in the future, that their credit score is actually increased. It's an average of 48 points for our customers. But yeah, that credit score for Europeans is really just a measure of how often you pay your bills on time. And that's really all it is. But unfortunately, particularly for lower income demographics, if you don't have a credit card, if you just operate purely based on a cash economy, then you don't have a credit score. It's almost impossible for you to get a credit score because you haven't had enough recurring accounts where you're paying on those bills. So it's very difficult for you to get most traditional financial products without one.
Yeah. Okay. So curious what's next? Where's Padsplit heading now? And are you gonna stick with the same model, or because like you have this platform, you have so many renters, you could technically now make partnerships with some developers, or you could yourself invest into building houses that are really optimized for the Padsplit tenants.
Yeah.
So where's it going?
Yeah, I mean, I love what we've been able to do, honestly, and I think it's probably more of the same, as boring as that might sound. But I mean, listen, we have lots of people who are building new construction Padsplit specific homes. I actually built a duplex a little over a year ago, and a number of other investors, developers have built products specifically for use as Padsplit. So I absolutely think you'll see that trend continue. But we will continue to try to develop tools to enable hosts to manage their units better, to make better decisions, and really, like, the reason we exist is to try to address the affordable housing shortage and to ensure that anyone anywhere has the capacity and ability to rent a decent place to stay. And the question we asked that ultimately kind of led to the foundation of the company was, do the people who serve our communities deserve at least an opportunity to live in them? And so for us, it's really just about creating opportunities and doing as many as we can. So targeting 100,000 units by the end of 2026, which is our hairy, audacious goal. And then hopefully a million by the end of 2030.
That's epic. Actually, who's staying at Padsplit? Because there's a few misconceptions about co-living, right? That co-living is only for youngsters.
Sure.
I'm really curious. Can you give some insights into like who's staying? What is the age groups? Do you have, and also like, have you been thinking about, for example, specific Padsplits just for niches, right? Just for seniors or just for,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually have one that's 55 plus, and that duplex that we built, one is a 55 plus community, and then one is market rate. So then you can kind of compare A, B. How are these different? But there are a decent number of senior communities on the platform today. Our average age is 35, 36. Median income is $27,000 a year, but you see a huge range from people who are earning fixed income or Social Security of $12,000 to $15,000, all the way up to north of $100,000. And the variety of room pricing has changed dramatically as well, and just the product that people are bringing on board. So the core is still very much this, call it around $30,000 a year or $15 an hour worker, who needs better access, better choices, and wants to be able to move closer to work. But you've seen students, international students actually is a big one. We just built something into the platform where we can qualify folks with visas now, and so we've seen an influx of international students. Seniors, again, I actually just posted something on LinkedIn about a woman who was 74 who was using Padsplit because she just had very few options given her fixed income. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's really cool to see not just how many different groups you can create these opportunities for, but also how different hosts are tailoring their offerings for these specific groups, and the opportunities that result, that you recognize, hey, if this opportunity did not exist for this individual, then this amazing outcome never could have happened. I mean, we've seen people start businesses, buy homes, become Padsplit hosts themselves, even some folks who had been homeless formerly, which is incredible. And those are really the things that keep me going every day, and I know really, really excite the team as well.
How can people join Padsplit?
Just go to the website. Yeah, padsplit.com. Whether you are a host or a potential host or a potential renter, just visit the site, and we've got tons of information there, or as you referenced, on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, lots of incredible stories, and we'd love anyone to join and be a part of it.
That's epic. Thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
My final question is always the same. It's as a co-living marketplace founder, what would be your advice to other founders who also want to build co-living spaces or co-living marketplaces? What have been maybe like some of the, if we go back, what have been some of the key things that maybe you would have done differently?
I think to some degree it's accepting that all these experiences are different, and as similar as we all are, and as humans, and looking for validation or fulfillment, you can have, despite all the difference, and we talked about some of the different groups of people, you've got to get really close to the problems to be able to solve them, and understanding that your solution may be different, or your idea of the perfect scenario may be different from someone else's. And so trusting each of those unique perspectives with their own choices, and giving them the power to make their own choices. I'd say that's really the biggest learning for me. And it goes to just letting folks make their own decisions about their lives, and then getting out of the way, but giving them both the the power of making those decisions, and then the responsibility and accountability for dealing with them. And then the rest, I think, generally sells for itself, right? I mean, whether you're talking about marketplaces or Darwinist evolution, generally, things have a way of shaking out, and we learn each and every day from lots of different people, from lots of different sources, and just keeping your eyes and ears open to learning different things, and that can change your strategy moving forward.
Sounds great. Atticus, thank you. I wish you all the best on this journey.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Right on, Gui. All right.
Take care.
Later.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Atticus and hearing about Padsplit. To me personally, it's a very inspiring story, and I want to recap 3 things that really stood out. The first one being that Padsplit focuses on accessible housing. The issue is not only affordable housing, it's accessibility to housing. As Atticus shared himself, 45% of the US population does not have access or cannot qualify for $1,000 a month apartment. And that is crazy. And that is why we need platforms like Padsplit that allow people who are in the low to medium income brackets to get accessible and affordable housing. So again, accessibility and affordability are a key theme in co-living, but currently they're underserved. And I really hope that Padsplit is going to be an inspiration for many more to come. The second thing that really struck me was that as a platform, they were able to create something that no other operator was able to do, and that is members' ratings. I find that idea genius. The fact that other members can rate other residents and basically give internal member scores. That's helping the platform to understand how members are doing and which members are a good fit for the community and which not. Again, genius, and I think this idea could be taken for some other operators that have their own operations and help them to understand who are the right tenants. And the third thing that stood out was their desire to educate hosts. When you go to the Padsplit platform, you're going to discover an entire website showcasing how somebody is going to do before and after Padsplit financially. And as Atticus was sharing, they're also giving to new hosts a bunch of best practices. Now, personally, I couldn't really figure out how much of these best practices are being shared. And Atticus said himself that they don't know. They don't know what is the best thing that works and what doesn't. And hosts have also to figure that out. So if you are curious about what is working and what are best practices for some of the leading co-living operators, I'm inviting you to check out our co-living incubator program, where we're going deep into all of the best practices to create really harmonious co-living spaces and co-living businesses. Thanks again for tuning in. Feel free to drop in the comments what marked you in this conversation and who you would like to hear next. And see you soon for another episode at Art of Co.